Viewer discretion is advised.
March 18th, 1970.
The Kipper consistently departs with a 10-minute delay. Percy consistently takes an odd job after completing his first. Gordon consistently takes the leftmost track with the heavy goods. And not one single engine double-checks the condition of a load's coupling. It's far from the most important pieces of information, but they are pieces that I can most distinctly recall off the top of my head. Surreal as it is to be sitting in this old wooden chair overlooking the harbor, I've gradually settled into the job in the last few months. I can't lie, it feels rather freeing not having a cranky old geezer breathing down your neck in the first few months of your job. A bothersome yet worthwhile bump to pass through, as I've really dreamt about such a position for several years now. Ever since I wrote the local down Brendam when I was a child, and seeing all those stretches of green, the smell of the sea air, the sound of the gulls, it was everything. It still kind of is. My wife can attest, year after year, visit after visit. Harwick, Norrby, Farquhar, Arlesburg. I fell more and more in love with the little island. So much so that years afterwards, departing university with a whole heap of loans, I sent a letter with my resume to the main office at Knapford. Truthfully, I was expecting a respectful, yet understandable, rejection. If I were Sir Charles, I would raise an eyebrow at the interviewee with nothing but a handful of baggage trolley experience, and the occasional cleaning of carriage interiors. No, not the undersides, thankfully. Of course, I was astonished, relieved, and slightly giddy come 3 weeks later when I opened an envelope sitting between a bill and magazine from Knapford, thanking me for my sent letter and an elegantly written "Welcome to the Northwestern family," accompanied by a small little stamp of a familiar shape that only Sir Gresley could be responsible for. After months of arduous training by the harsh old signalman of Knapford, Rob is his name, I was deemed ready to ride without training wheels. Since then, and here now, it's been an absolute dream and an honor. The view is always beautiful, even through the night, and especially towards dawn. The faces are always friendly, and the one I see most is Henry, with his whole Kipper run and all. I do have to admit, the job isn't perfect. Far from it, really. Provided how many people apply for a spot on the Northwestern, I was actually quite fortunate to even get one to begin with. As a result, I was one of the last to be accepted for the year, and due to that, I was stuck with working the evening shifts at the old box. And because of that, I get awfully lonely up here, overseeing a pretty, yet forlorn view of the night. And well, I suppose that's why I'm writing this as I am now. Not that I plan on sharing this with anyone, really. Call it my little sanity circle. Square? Bubble? No matter. The point is, I needed to find some way to stop myself from going crazy from isolation. And, well, the best thing I could do without clogging up the lines just to shoot the breeze with the box at Tidmouth are these notes. If it feels like I can talk with somebody, in some form, even if indirectly, it'll be good enough for me, I suppose. Anyways, I've rambled on long enough. My shift is about to end. I suppose I'll update on these when I get the chance to, or if I get lonely enough. Signing off.
April 28th, 1970.
Hey, it's me again. Not exactly sure why I'm starting out like that, but I guess it feels more human to do so. Never mind, it's been quite an eventful week on the railway. It's only in writing this that I realized that I've neglected to mention in my past letter of the mandatory tea breaks provided to the signalmen of the Northwestern. Like I said, absolute dream. Just today, apparently Keith, the afternoon signalman of Crosby, had neglected to answer the call to the station master of a blockage to the yard. Apparently some old steamroller named George obstructed Duck from clearing the line, and as a result, part of his train was damaged by the surging Wild Northwestern, which had been given the clear by Keith earlier. The steamroller and his operator had been punished, but so had Keith, who apparently was laid off on the spot after he admitted that he was too lost in thought about something. Honestly, if you ask me, harsh as it may seem, he got what he deserved. Trains are no matter to be slacking off on. They're giant, powerful machines with the weight of several elephants and the momentum of a swinging wrecking ball. Once they get moving, there is little to nothing that can stop them immediately. And that's precisely why workers like us have to remain vigilant. There's no room for error or time spent lost in thought, whatever that's supposed to mean. If you're wondering, by the way, Gordon's fine. Understandably miffed at the circumstances, but fine. Rotten little roadway radical! He ought to be ousted for such wretched treason. Something along those lines. The point is, people should really be mindful around the tracks. Someone could seriously get hurt if you aren't careful. And when it reaches a certain point of no return, no amount of sorry can fix that. Honestly, the nerve of some workers of the railway, responsible for the safety of these strong and sentient beings. No matter. A man like that is far from the switches at Crosby now. Good riddance. Anyhow, I should get ready for my shift. It's almost sunset, and I have an obligation to the railway.
June 12th, 1970.
I think I should consider seeing a doctor soon. Seems the evening shifts and their little quirks have begun catching up with me at last. I guess I shouldn't go as too much of a surprise. I've never been much of a night owl, in all honesty. For most of my life, I've had trouble sleeping. Usually I'd be kept awake, lying in bed. Yet the moment I get up and start doing anything but sleeping, I get insanely drowsy. I suppose part of it can be attributed to my ruined schedule, spending most nights sneaking out as a young little lad to throw eggs at Mr. Wilson's house for giving me bad marks. I wasn't a good kid. Besides that, come university, the problems worsened as I spent hours working on meaningless busywork that stretched far past the Sandman's designated schedule. Now, here I was, stuck to the task of Knapford Harbor's evening signalman, an 8-hour shift from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. It certainly was not doing my dreamland schedule any favors, and now it seems to be affecting me even outside of Sleepytown. Recently, and for the past few weeks really, I've been getting these weird flashes in my vision. Short dims into darkness, uneven ground, and even sometimes the outline of a person from the corner of my eye. Hell, one time Henry caught me gazing off to a pile of rusty buffers and wheels and inquired about my inattentiveness.
Are you alright? You seem a little distracted.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I just thought I saw something, that's all.
Saw something? You mean those old buffers? I mean no disrespect, but they aren't exactly the prettiest sight of the harbor.
Yeah, you'd be right. If it were the buffers I was looking at.
Is that right? What were you looking at then?
At the moment, I couldn't really come up with a rational response that wouldn't make me look like I was losing my mind, so I gave him a half-hearted shrug and a simple, I don't know. He seemed to take the hint as he dropped the matter, though he did seem a little uneasy after leaving. Honestly, I can't really blame him. For his grumpy and workaholic front that's put up underneath the coat of green was an engine of deep superstition. Though he didn't completely buy into the idea of the boogeyman or werewolves, he could get behind the belief of a plane of existence beyond the physical where we reside. One time he told me of a magical wishing tree in the forest near Crosby that could change the scope of your life if you made a wish to it. It sounds ridiculous, I know, and I suppose that's why I didn't want to tell Henry of the possibility of some shadowy spirit roaming the yards of Knapford Harbor, which could very well just be a side effect of years of ruined sleeping habits. No offense to Henry, of course. I will say, for being a symptom of potential narcolepsy, Sometimes the visions seem strangely realized on some days. For one, the vision seems extremely consistent in outline and almost never strays from the appearance I would see every other day. I've booked an appointment with my doctor, but I won't be able to see him for another 2 months due to an influx of appointments made prior to mine. I suppose I'll have to wait until then. If anything else happens, I'll write it down here. I suppose it helps to ground myself in some way. With that, I'll be returning to my post.
June 26th, 1970.
2 months from this moment seems so much longer now than before. I really don't have a good explanation for it, and I fear writing about it might just exacerbate the issue. Where do I start? It really is not like me for something like this, and I swear it truly was an honest misstep. It was really like any other night, sitting on standby and awaiting the consist I had given the clear minutes earlier. I suppose at some point in time my mind just began to wander, and the vision slowly came into view. It slowly became hazy and everything felt lopsided, but that wasn't the strangest part. From what I could make out in my drowsy daze, the figure, who for the longest time had been standing outside a great distance from my box, now stood stock still in the corner of my box. In that short moment of time that I had realized its presence inside of the room, I reacted. I stumbled back on my chair in shock and panic, and in the confusion I felt my elbow push against something solid. As I came to, I began to grow lucid, and light returned to the world, and the figure had vanished. The slow adjustment of my teary eyes were accompanied with the realization that I had inadvertently pushed one of the levers controlling the points. I had only a few vital seconds to switch the mainline points back to parallel as the whistled shriek of a familiar red mogul echoed through the once silent night, followed by an equally haunting bellow of a 28 diesel horn. Near miss. A few minutes later, though it could have been seconds for all I could remember, Yardmaster Collins stormed into my box, furious as all hell that had nearly caused a raking collision due to my reckless actions. "The hell do you think you're doing, jamming up the points like that? You could have seriously hurt someone, you pillock." I'm so sorry, Mr. Collins. Something happened, and I made a mistake. To write a mistake? To think Mr. Robbins was the one who tutored you for months. You forget up the most basic of safety, plonker. Sorry, bringing back thousands of damages and worse. I understand. I am truly sorry. I promise I won't let it happen again. You're wearing that green coat around your shoulders for a good reason, kid. These engines and workers around you are putting their trust in your bloody hands. You control where and how each one of these living, breathing things comes and goes. You make one wrong move and next time it won't just be the cargo that's spilled. Another act like that, Sir Charles will hear about it. You understand me? Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. The rest of the night, I just kind of sat there, silent. What could I really say? Nothing more came of it, but the incident lingered in my mind for a while. Well, maybe that would be an understatement. As I've said, it really isn't like me to be so careless, especially around work-related matters. I can't even exactly recall how much time I'd spent right this moment just contemplating my thoughts and staring down at this paper. I mean, sure, Collins had good reason to reprimand me and my careless actions, but he was awfully harsh with how he put it. It wasn't as though I had purposely activated the switches to cause an accident. Really, the reason I had mistakenly switched the tracks was because I was reacting to that thing. Where is that thing? How did it get inside? Any other time, that shadowed figure would stand a few couple meters away from this old signal box. Somehow tonight, it got inside. Are my hallucinations worsening? That has to be the reason. Perhaps I might be going delirious. I suppose I'll need to find some way to stay awake. stay alert, ensure that nothing like tonight happens again. I'll keep writing, if only to keep my sanity.
August 15th, 1970.
Truthfully, I do not know where to start. Everything seems so slow right now, and even then, it becomes harder to process the things around me. Everything is so blurry right now, and the events keep flowing through like a rushing river in a canyon. Perhaps writing it down will help even a little bit. Tonight was meant to be like any other, a Kipper run to the mainland. The train was scheduled to leave the harbor en route to Vicarstown via the main line. Minutes ago, I'd given the clear for the train to pass the box. I don't exactly recall the time, but I had sat there, staring into the beautiful night sky. The stars littered the darkness like they would any other night, the soft ambiance of ocean waves caressing the cliffsides in the distance. In my trance, I barely registered the fog that had begun to settle in. It wasn't much of a mist, and the clear had already been sent for Henry. As long as he exercised caution, the fog wouldn't be too big of an issue through the countryside. Of course, in losing myself to those thoughts, I barely registered just how thick the mist had gotten, and how dark the air soon became. Everything began to tilt once more, and in turning around, I found myself inches away from the figure all those months before. I fell back, partially due to my prior instability, but mostly due to the shock of how close the figure had gotten. In my haze, I couldn't make out anything discernible from the form, other than it resembled something almost humanoid. I tried to move my arms, my legs, anything, but it was almost as though my body was completely paralyzed from the tip of my toes to the ends of my hair. A cold chill ran up my spine as it bent its crude, darkened form closer to my face. In the blankness of the unknown, I couldn't make it. I heard a sound. A blaring, constant, mechanical, maddening, blaring, and ringing. It droned on, and I just sat in place, frozen, unable to move and unable to speak. It went on, and every fiber of my being had begged whatever God was out there to please, oh please, make it stop. Everything came to light again. The glow of the box returned, and the figure had vanished. What hadn't vanished was the noise, far less distorted and coming from nearby. The phone. In my daze and shaky panic, I went over. A ringing in my head had drowned out every other sound to the outside world as I tried my best to discern what it was that was said over the phone. Train. Red. Run. Stop. Coastal run. Submerged. Stop the train. Henry. As the ringing subsided, the shouts of Mr. Collins finally settled into my ears, and I turned to the dusty windows of the signal box. Through the white mist, I could only make out the silhouette of a passing green shape as it thundered past, pulling a long rake of vans and wagons. It soon vanished into a cloud of steam. Dismissed. That's the word he used. And it would be the last word I'd ever hear directly from Sir Charles in my life. The damage was expensive and inexcusable. Collins had sent the call the second he was informed of the damaged track on the coastal route, and had rung for several minutes in order to intercept Henry. In those minutes, I had missed the calls, and when I finally answered, I did not act in haste and urgency. As a result, Henry, his crew, and his delivery had taken the coastal route. Luckily, Henry and his crew survived, but the damaged cargo was lost to the sea. The damage was far too expensive and destructive to overlook, and I was found to be at fault for the accident.
This is not something I can overlook. Well, luckily nobody was hurt. It has become abundantly clear to me that you may not be ready for this position. As far as I'm aware, and I regret to inform you, but you will no longer be working on my railway starting today. I wish you the best for the future. You are officially dismissed.
He wasn't harsh with his words, and perhaps that was what hurt the most. I packed everything from my little apartment at Tidmouth this morning and took a train back to Barrow. As I'm writing this now, I'm sitting here in a hotel room for the night, planning to take the morning train back to Keswick. For the entire duration of today, I've just been moving in a constant trance. Those words, dismissed. I tried to get some sleep, but like every other night, I couldn't. Maybe writing could help. Maybe it's temporary. He did say, not ready, which could suggest I could be one day. Or perhaps this was some test by Sir Charles. I had heard stories about the Hat family doing stuff like this in the past. Maybe. I'll cling on to this notion of maybe, and perhaps it'll help sway the tears from dripping down on this small piece of paper on this old desk, so I can continue writing tomorrow. Maybe.
September 10th, 1970.
I suppose betrayal isn't just exclusive to one sector of a man's life. No, it bleeds and tails you whenever you feel you are safest. I woke up several hours late to my train back to Keswick, meaning that I had to wait another 5 hours until the next train back to town. I had to stand in the freezing rain and blistering wind, as apparently the station building was under maintenance. Many of the passengers had anticipated the dreary weather and were quick to board when they could. So of course, I was left waiting as the hotel kicked me out after checkout. As if the day couldn't have gotten more rotten, I somehow forgot to properly seal my packed case. So rainwater leaked through and soaked all my nice dry clothes. Wonderful. Eventually, the train did arrive and I was able to escape Mother Nature's cruel idea of a joke. Because of the rotten weather, fog had practically covered the totality of the skies, and as a result, I wasn't even able to give one last glance at the island I always dreamt of working on since I was a little lad, riding aboard the local down Brendam. Even the bridge was covered in a thick blanket of white. What I could make out through the haze of condensation was not a sight that I had hoped to be my last parting gift with Sodor. A familiar figure cloaked in darkness, standing in the middle of the tracks towards Sodor. Everything had gone blurry, dark, unstable. I couldn't process anything in those fleeting moments that apparently lasted longer than I'd thought, because when I finally came to, I was being shouted at by the conductor to get the hell up. It was time to leave. The whole walk home, all I could think about was what Sir Charles had said to me. I couldn't escape it, and the poor sleep just served to further upset me as I pulled the keys from my pocket and entered my home. My wife was shocked, to say the least, to see me back so soon, as we had an entire plan to slowly move into the town by Farquhar come December when I had made enough to afford a house. Those plans were down the drain, to say the least. Of course, she had a number of questions regarding my early return home, but I truthfully did not feel like revisiting the matter, being so fresh on my mind. So I simply answered that something had happened and that we would need to change a few plans around. This, however, was not a satisfactory answer, so she continued to press. She got more and more agitated with each answer I gave, so I retreated to the guest bedroom for the night. After some time, she seemed to finally drop the matter as she stopped banging on the guest bedroom door. As much as I loved her, I really could not spare the energy to recount my termination from the railway of my dreams. I didn't even eat that evening. Despite the knocking at my door, all I could do was lie in bed and stare up at the ceiling, trying to count the number of cracks overhead and deep within. At some point, I guess I passed out from exhaustion, as the drone of raindrops had vanished when I came to, and the soft light made its way through the dusty window by the empty desk. At breakfast, my wife gently but firmly repeated her question as to what had happened to bring me all the way back home to Keswick. Again, I really didn't want to talk about it, but seeing the look of concern on her face stirred a visceral feeling of guilt in the pit of my stomach, and it broke the barrier that had formed around my heart. So I told her everything. The evening, the call, the termination, and the visions. When I had finished, she just sat there, silent. I suppose there really isn't much to say, and that's probably why she stood up afterwards and told me she needed some space. For the next few weeks, I was in a limbo of sorts, acting out the motions, not giving much thought to anything I was doing. Place after place, I tried my hardest to start over, but the stain on my record from my time on the Northwestern ensured that I was turned away each and every attempt. Life had made certain I would never touch a railway ever again. Then one day, I can't even recall when exactly, it started again. Again, I had shut myself into the spare guest bedroom and sat at the empty desk that was gradually collecting dust from our collective neglect in cleaning it. I had taken only a brief moment to raise my head from the wood when everything started dimming to darkness. The ground beneath felt so unstable, even sitting upon what I assumed to be the chair to the desk. I attempted to stand, stumbling upon an increasingly uneven surface, blindly searching for where I could recall the door had been. Then the droning came back, a constant stream of noise, and as familiar as the one that had occurred that night so long ago. I stumbled into the hall, nothing seemed familiar, and my vision was growing darker by the second. That's where I saw it. The thing. It stood only a few inches from where I was, its dark surface and fuzzy outline that appeared almost human as it stood seemingly staring at my pathetic form. This thing, this creature, made its way back to my safe space. It wasn't enough that this wretched thing had taken what was dear to me, but now it had returned to the place where I thought I was the safest. Something deep within me had awoken in that small window of time, and it spiked enough strength within me to approach this wretched thing before me, the thing that had stolen away my hopes and dreams. I raised a clenched fist, ready to throw it straight at the monster that had tormented me for months. Go to hell, you rotten little leech! I don't know how it happened. Even writing this, I still can't recall that exact gap in time. Everything before was as vivid and crystal clear as every other recollection. It was as though time had jumped 2 meters ahead of where it had been prior. I couldn't say what had happened in that brief period. All I could remember was the light returning to view, the feeling of stable ground, the hall, and my wife sat stock still on the floor as she stared up at me, her face splattered in red and frozen in complete terror. Not a word was exchanged, and I fell to the ground and remained until she had left our room with a bag and coat, and never came back. It's been a week, and it'll be another soon enough.
December 22nd, 1970.
Years ago, me and my wife sat together at an old bench in Hope Park. When we did, we shared our hopes and dreams for the future. At some point, I had told her of that ride to Brendam, and the stretches of green, the smell of the air, and the sound of the gulls. That day, we decided that our future would be on Sodor. I would find work, and she would wait until I saved just enough for a house in the hills of Farquhar. December 22nd marked the day we decided to marry, and the day we would become part of the Northwestern family. Now, today will mark the day that I depart from the world. If anyone finds this, I am leaving for another place. A quiet place. A better place. There's a bridge not too far from what will be my former home. It holds too many painful memories now. This will be the last note I will ever make before I leave. And though nobody will ever read it, I thank whoever will take the time to read it. It's strange. I've made my mind up, but a small part of me is still scared. I have no idea if I'll feel it or not, if I even go to a better place. Maybe Mother and Father are just gone for good. I can't sit here forever to write about it. The pain will stay if I do. Amelia, I don't know if this will ever reach you, but I'm sorry. I am so sorry, and even if you hate me forever, I will always and still love you. Again, thank you for whoever will take the time out of their day to read even a word of what's here. I leave at 12. Goodbye.
May 16th, 1971.
Sorry, I lied. I chickened out. Well, maybe that isn't entirely the truth either. In which case, sorry again. A lot has happened since that cold night in December, and I suppose I should really start there. After writing that note, I stuck it into a small manila envelope with the rest of my ramblings from the past few months. I left the house around 10 and made a long walk towards the Portenscale suspension bridge, ready to depart this cruel world. On the way, my mind swirled with the thoughts of what would happen if I failed. At best, I would be put in the loony bin with the rest of the crazies of the world, and at worst, I would be physically damaged for life, and only then would I wither away on a hospital bed until death took pity upon my miserable life. It only dawned on me then just how far of a drop it was from the railings of the bridge to the dark waters of the river. If the fall didn't do it, my last moments would be spent flailing in ice-cold waters as I lost air. At that, I hesitated. I wanted it to be quick and painless. I was already sick of the constant pain that lingered through every sector of my life up until that very moment, standing at a ledge staring towards certain demise. But I stopped. Not out of fear. Not out of remorse. Not out of guilt. The ground became unstable, and I caught myself just quick enough to fall back onto the ground of the bridge. Now? As my vision began to darken, I lost sight of the ledge, and turning my head to discern even a small bit of where I once stood, I saw it. The thing from months ago, standing a few meters away from where I sat. That thing. That awful, wicked thing. The thing that ripped away everything that was precious to my life with its presence. And here it was again, waiting for me to put an end to my miserable life like a ravenous vulture. It had come back, come to witness its work, some kind of grim, sick satisfaction knowing that it alone had completely destroyed my life. The unsteady ground didn't matter anymore, nor did the droning that had already begun to ring through my ears, and neither did the darkness that was attempting to completely overtake my vision. I was going to put an end to it, an end to this rotten little thing that took everything from me. I ran towards the disgusting being. A feeling of deep, visceral hatred ran through the entirety of my being as I prepared to make contact. Then, it all came back. The moon's soft glow returned, the ground steady once more, and the figure gone. I sat there on my knees and my arms on the ground. I began to violently pound at the concrete, slamming my arms again and again. When I couldn't ignore the pain anymore, I began violently clawing at the same spot. My mind flooded with the words that echoed for months upon months, the harsh and nasty words of Mr. Collins and the disavowing ones of Sir Charles. Why? Why? What did I do to deserve this? Rough night. It took me a moment to register the voice. I raised my head, fighting back several tears as my gaze met that of a man in a long brown coat and a smart little cap that matched his attire. How long had he been standing here, watching as I lost my mind over some sick monster that only ever seemed to appear for me? He raised a brow in my long silence, probably assuming I was some nutjob who had just left the pub. You don't know half of it. I know most folks don't go out to break their arms on the bridge at this hour. Great, so he did see. Yeah, well, I wouldn't really mind if I did break them, to be honest. To that, he raised a brow once more. Look, kid, I don't exactly know your story, but whatever it is you're thinking, I guarantee you ain't gonna get what you're looking for. And it ain't gonna be pretty. Yeah? How would you know? A fatal fall is around 20 feet towards solid ground. That's around a few 100,000 pounds of force. When it don't get you, you'll be stuck living with broken bones, torn muscles, paralysis, you name it. And you get the luck of feeling every bit of it as you drown, which is about 6 minutes of excruciating pain as you see nothing but darkness in your last minutes. To that, I couldn't say anything. It seemed my fears were validated by his words. Still want to make that jump, kid? Again, I didn't say anything. Really, what could I respond with? Where do you live? This ain't the place for small talk. Keswick, East Side. Blimey, kid. You walked that long for this? Bloody hell, you must have a real story then. Yeah, I guess I do. As we made our way back towards Keswick, I was understandably hesitant to share too much with this stranger. Admittedly, he did save my life, kind of. I owed it to him to share just a little bit after all. As we continued walking, however, I guess I just started opening up a bit more. It wasn't as though I had any other person who would listen anyways, so I told him. My dreams, the letter, the job, the accident, the layoff, the divorce, and the visions. He raised a curious brow when I described the visions, but the rest of the time he just listened quietly. As I relayed the events leading up to me standing at the edge of the Portinscale suspension bridge, kilometers away from home, I think at some point I began tearing up. He just placed a hand on my shoulder as we continued walking down the dimly lit street towards my apartment. Bloody hell. You really have had a rough few months, haven't you? Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, the industry can be real heartless sometimes. A lot of it comes down to bottom lines for the people above. Maybe it wasn't personal. Not the most comforting thing, but sometimes it's the truth. I couldn't really comment on that. And I suppose I didn't have the chance to, as the moment we reached the stairway leading up to my apartment. I only then noticed that it left the door ajar in my haste to leave. Shit. Part of me knew it was already futile, but I rushed up as quickly as I could. The sight before me told the full story. Everything was trashed. The furniture in pieces, every framed photo of me shattered, and several of my personal belongings swiped. Amelia's family always did have an issue with me. I just fell to my knees in the middle of my ransacked bedroom and started crying again.
Jesus, kid. You weren't kidding about the wife's family.
I didn't answer. How could I? The place I once thought was safe had been compromised once again, and I couldn't even be there to defend it, and now everything was ruined once more.
You know, I got an extra room in my house. It ain't the prettiest sight in the valley, but it'll be a lot safer than sticking around until the crazies come back looking for blood.
I looked up at him, shocked. Had I just crossed paths with a guardian angel? Or did my story touch this complete stranger deeper than I could have ever imagined? Why are you doing this?
The Samaritan didn't need a reason to help the beaten Jew now, did he? The offer still stands. You can take it or leave it.
What choice did I have? I slowly made my way to my closet to retrieve the last pieces of clothing that survived. He took that as acceptance and told me he would drive over in his car. As I searched the drawers for any surviving pieces of my old apartment, I found the envelope of my notes. Shockingly, they were untouched. With little to nothing else inside of the apartment, I brought them with me as they were still my belongings. I wrote a letter to the landlord explaining everything, and with it, a healthy amount of money. I stuck it into the postbox before making my way to the stranger's car. As I set my belongings in the back seats of the Cortina, he spoke.
By the way, name's Richard. I'll help you get back on your feet.
I gave a small nod before boarding the passenger seat, and we left the street. I looked back to the quiet little neighborhood as the sun began to rise. It would be the last glance into the life I once had. The drive was uneventful and rather long. I wasn't much in the mood for conversation, and Richard didn't seem to mind as he placed all of his attention on the road. The whole way there, I was just caught in a trance. My mind only then began slowly accepting the sheer amount of change I was undergoing, and under the stress, I held back more tears. I don't think Richard seemed to notice, and once again, I was grateful. Eventually, we pulled into a rural spot deep in the valley. The house was modest, to say the least, but it certainly beat sleeping in a torn-to-shit apartment any day. It was easy moving in, as I didn't have much to carry inside, and sure enough, he led me into the spare guest room of the house.
It ain't much, but it'll be a good spot to hunker down until you can find work again.
I really do not know what to say. Thank you. Thank you ever so much. I am in your debt, and I will do anything to repay your kindness. To that, he just gave a small laugh.
Easy, kid. Settle in before you speak too soon. You want to repay my kind? Why not start by accepting the job I got for you?
A job? Really? Already? How?
To tell you the truth, kid, the place I work at has been hurting for a few new faces for a bit. Let me make it clear that I didn't just drive 100,000 kilometers away from Keswick just to recruit some sad soul staring down a ledge. You were hurting, and I figured from what you told me that this will be a good place to start all over. What do you say? You up for repaying my kind?
Where do I start? When can I start?
Pelhay Coal Company. It's a few kilometers away from here. I can drive you over and you can have a look. I'll speak with the manager and I'm sure he'll start you as soon as you want.
I thanked him again. It still didn't feel real. Was he really a guardian angel? That didn't matter. As soon as I had my stuff unpacked, I hastily dressed in the best attire I could with what had survived earlier that morning. It wasn't much, but I was determined to sell that I was willing and ready. I approached the Cortina in a better mood than I'd been in months. Richard gave a chuckle at the sight.
Blimey, kid. You dressed for the big shots this early? I ain't got that much steam, you know. You'll be working your way up like everyone else.
Fine. More than fine.
Several months being denied job after job due to domestic violence, a stain on my record due to my layoff from the Northwestern. I would be fine if I just started out as a human washcloth for mineral dust. Well, maybe not that far, but work was work, and I could finally start picking up the pieces of my trashed life. I could start anew, who knows, maybe if I was lucky I could even make it big enough here to move beyond it. I was getting ahead of myself. I needed to make a good first impression. As we parked at the entrance of the colliery, a mixture of anxiety and excitement flowed through every inch of my body. Have a look around, kid. Familiarize yourself with the land. I'll go speak with the manager and I'll call you over when he's ready. I made my way past the entrance to the colliery, a large sign overhead reading, Fred Pelhay Coal Company. It's funny, 3 years ago, the government began shutting down several collieries due to industry shifting towards the use of diesel fuel. Only a handful of collieries survived as a result of nationalization. How this one managed to stay afloat thus far intrigued me. Several workers were bustling about the yard, a handful operating the belts loading minerals into the chutes, and a good few below holding shovels as they worked away, loading several lorries with heaps of dirty coal ready for transfer. It wasn't the most flattering-looking job, but, as I said, work was work. This old plant ain't open to visitors, chap. I turned in surprise at a scruffier-looking man in a soot-covered flannel with suspenders holding up a pair of dark brown trousers. He looked me up and down, a slightly disapproving stare as he did so. Oh, no, I'm not a visitor. I'm here for work. Work? With how spruced you look? I wanted to make a good impression. At that, he gave a throaty laugh. Who do you think you're meeting? The Prime Minister? The boss ain't swayed by posers and dresses. A poser? Is it so criminal of me to keep up with appearances? I suppose I'm asking the wrong man with the wrong line of work, aren't I? Listen here, city boy, your money ain't shit out here. You best watch your back or your tongue's gonna get you into trouble. Before I could retort, I heard a familiar voice shouting out to me from the large building close to the mines. I turned to Richard, who gave a quick motion of his head to come up the stairs and into what was presumably the manager's office. Not missing a beat, I quickly made my way over. The whole time, I felt the worker's eyes burning a hole in the back of my head. I couldn't be bothered to think about him. Richard let me inside, and it was there, at the desk, where I met the manager of the company. Morning, lad. Richard here has told me you're looking for work. Nothing's biting in the pond right now, is that right? Yes, that's right. It's not that I don't want to work, it's just, well, it's been hard, sir. Frederick Pelhay. Right now it's Mr. Pelhay to you. Tell me, what'd you do before? I managed baggage trolleys at Keswick. Clean carriages here and there. That's all? Well, I worked as a signalman on a Northwestern for a while. This seemed to grab Mr. Pelhay's attention. Is that right? What happened? I swallowed at the question. Was this it? Was I going to lose my golden opportunity, gifted to me on a silver platter, all because of that awful, tragic mistake? I was laid off. Laid off? For negligence. So why should I bring you aboard? In the few seconds that he had asked that question, the question I had heard countless times with each interview since that night my wife left the apartment, I broke. No, I couldn't do it again. I couldn't let it happen again. Not again. Please, I beg you, Mr. Pelhay, I have nowhere else to go. My apartment was destroyed, my beautiful life is gone, and nobody wants me anywhere near the place I love so dearly. Please give me a chance. I will do anything. I will be eternally in your debt. Just please don't turn me away, please. In that moment, time had seemingly froze. Not one word was uttered. Not a sound was made. I think even the breeze had stopped.
everything went completely still.
"Stand up, lad."
Upon hearing his voice, I slowly responded. Gingerly, I left the ground and stood up. He looked me dead in the eyes, a stone-cold face as his gaze met mine. My feet had practically turned to ice. I was paralyzed in anticipation. Then, he spoke.
"You've got a lot of heart for a fresher. I like it. Now listen closely. You start Thursday and no later. You hear?"
Yes, sir, Mr. Ballet.
"And take that dress off. You'll break a nail out here, city boy."
At that, I couldn't suppress my excitement. The whole drive home, I was relieved and elated. No more constant rejections and lonely walks back to my sad little empty apartment. It was over. I finally got a job. A dirty commoner's job, but that didn't matter. It was work. I could finally start building my life back. And it was all thanks to the generosity of these wonderful folks. These guardian angels that literally pulled me away from an edge. From that day forward, I promised to myself that I would do anything to repay their generosity and kindness. That night, I slept better than I'd ever slept since the night I got fired from the Northwestern. There's nothing to describe the immense satisfaction of waking up from a rest without hiccups the next day, and with the added hope and assurance of a better, brighter future. Thursday was admittedly a little awkward, but it was the best kind of awkward, as it felt like an honest sort. As Richard had predicted, I would be working from the bottom to the top. The work was dirty, tedious, and rough on the body. Shoveling coal into the open trunks of waiting lorries has the added effect of an extremely painful back the next morning and the day after that. Yet despite the constant physical toll the job had entailed, I wouldn't give a minute of it away. I'd never return to the point in my life where I sat alone every evening supper, waiting for some kind of miracle. Call it a result of living several months in isolated misery, but there was nothing I would change about my new life, and the future ahead of me. Well, almost nothing. In those first few weeks of working, I suppose I had naively believed that I would have eased into the job rather smoothly. I mean, really, how difficult does it get shoveling coal into the bunkers of lorries? Well, it wouldn't be the labor of the job that caused the most issues. If you could believe it, provided the back pain. No. Since the third week of starting out, I've experienced the so-called hazing of the environment. It started out innocently enough, hiding my shovel behind the cabinets, cleaning everyone's laundry because all freshers had to, daft is written on the ceiling, etc. Come the 6th week, things started getting a little more potent. Untied bootlaces, broken shovel, and the worst of it, my morning coffee spiced with a little so-called flavor coated in yellow. Behind the entire practice, of course, was Scott, my friendly tour guide from the first day I arrived. He certainly wasn't shy in showing me just how much he hated my guts. Really, all the teasing and harmless fun the rest of the team partook in served as an excellent mask and excuse to make every working day a complete hell for me specifically. I don't know exactly what the chap's problem is with me, but over time I began to grow more and more sick of the constant targeted torment. One day I managed to catch Scott taking hold of one of my recently repaired shovels from my cabinet. I took the opportunity to confront my workplace bully. Hey, just what is your bloody deal with me? Haven't you gotten tired of this ridiculous little game of yours?
No, don't you get all uppity now. Just how it rolls with new blood around these parts.
Codswallop, I wasn't born yesterday. I know you're doing this on purpose.
And just what gives you that idea?
The hell are you planning with my shovel?
Nothing. It looks a little queer. Let me just fix that for you, pal.
And with that, in one swift motion, his knee pierced through the thin wood of the tool. The split pieces fell to the floor in a clatter.
it took a moment to process just what had happened. There we are, a little makeover for the spade. Pity she won't be ready for the coal run today. I suppose I need a job for everybody after all. What in God's name is your problem with me? I haven't done anything to you these past few months, you sadist! I ain't gotta tell you squat, Rawbone. You're gonna have to tell Mr. Pelhay why you're standing above my split shovel you've been breaking since day 10 of working here, wise guy. Think Mr. Pelhay's some kind of nanny, sissy boy? What matters to him is getting your work done and as efficiently as possible. He ain't batting an eye at a broken shovel, but he'll be watching like a hawk when he sees a slacker not following through with his promises. Just as well, dirty city rats don't belong out here where real men are. At that moment, for the briefest moment, the light vanished to dark, and the ground became unstable. Somehow I found myself pinning a 6-foot angry tosser against the wall, delivering furious swing after the next. His retaliations were hardly noticeable as I continued seeing nothing but red. Eventually the darkness lifted and the ground stabilized as I felt a powerful force pull me away from the man causing me several months of torment. It all slowly came back to the world. Mother Mary, what's gotten into you? I didn't say a word, just gave an enraged stare as Scott returned one, slowly walking away from the wall I had pinned him against. You know damn well not to attack your colleagues out here. Mr. Pelhay's gonna have to hear about this. I sat seething the entire drive to the shunting yard that evening. Mr. Pelhay put me through the ringer that afternoon when he was informed by the worker who had walked in on me assaulting Scott. As a result, I got stuck working over hours in order to make up for my foolish error. Of course, I didn't even want to mention the shovel. I pulled up next to the line of wagons that would depart the next morning on Route 2, ironically enough, Sodor. I parked the lorry next to the belt and started the machine. I loaded a shovel full of sooty coal, not mine, mind you, and released my anger through the laborious work that was costing me precious hours of sleep.
Temper, mate. You'd lose your frames if you had any.
I looked around. Who was that? Was someone else here working late? It couldn't be. Mr. Pelhay said I'd be alone for the task as punishment. Who's there? If you're looking to rob me, you'd be disappointed. I don't have anything, and I'm truthfully not in the mood.
You needn't worry about that. Ain't got a reason to pilfer from you.
Yeah? And how's that? How can I take your word for it?
Simple. I can't.
Can't?
Eyes here, lad. No worries. I ain't a biter.
I turned in the direction of the voice, and only then did I realize what he had meant. The voice wasn't that of a nighttime burglar or a malicious coworker looking to haze me. It was the empty. One of the wagons. Through the dark, I could make out a rather grisly face. The sides of the old truck read out the name of my company. Your Pelhay property. The old truck gave a hearty, splintering chuckle.
Guilty as charged. Part of the lineage indeed. Happy to lend a buffer when old truck can.
I see. I assume you're part of the load headed to Sodor?
Keen eye. Not bad for a fresher.
Yeah, well, the lads would say otherwise, especially after today.
Oh, and how's that?
Well, let's just say Scott is a right tosser with some real insecurities.
Ah, Scott. The bad-tempered bloke with an alcohol problem?
Yeah, rotten old bully. Countless months of senseless torment. And all for... Wait, what was that?
Yes, Scott. I know. He's an awfully surly sort. Always needs to be the biggest man in the room. Loves his Al, and the wife doesn't care for it. He doesn't take lightly to backtalk. You'd be lucky to walk away with just an injured leg if you really pulled the wrong coupling. I should know. The splinters are evidence enough.
Yeah, well, someone really ought to put that big oaf in his place. Show him that his little game of intimidation doesn't apply to everyone.
Is that a proclamation?
I'm not sure. Why?
Well, you put it best. He's a bully, riddled with insecurities and a capacity to hurt. What good would it be to allow such a nasty sort to go on unchecked?
Of course, but really, what can I do? Even with all of his blatant problems, everyone around him is scared to death to do something about him. To hear from Mr. Pelhay, you'd assume the guy was a saint.
Mr. Pelhay does care for his bottom line. To him, what matters most is the effectiveness of his workers.
Well, maybe not entirely. He did still give me this job despite my horrendous record and lack of experience. Said I had heart.
Then would it be out of the realm of possibilities that it might have earned you Scott's ire?
It? What do you mean?
Scott prides himself on being the biggest and most capable man on the team. He's far from young, and when he took the job, he made it a point that he was an irreplaceable asset despite being rougher around the edges. Now, take that train of thought and picture this. A new bloke from the city comes waltzing in, earning the immediate approval of Mr. Pelhay despite having little to show initially. Just imagine how this new flower of the patch would be if given the proper resources to grow. What would that mean for you?
Huh. So that's it then. I'm a threat to his constructed hierarchy.
If I were in the position of an insecure bully, I too would make an effort to snuff out any possibility of challenge to my authority.
Then, what should I do?
Well, you're a man. I'm merely a wagon. You know an awful lot of this country's history, probably more than I do. And especially in the case with the French, all oppressive regimes inevitably fall due to the act of rebellion, usually resulting in the removal of such a regime.
What are you getting at?
Let me put it this way. Do you recall what happened to King Louis and Miss Marie Antoinette?
Wait, hold on. You aren't suggesting...
Oh, no, you're quite right. Merely a suggestion, but perish the thought. What right do we have as a collective to challenge such brutal, rotten authority by brutal, rotten violence? Alas, we're a civilized bunch after all. Only the untamed could ever think to brutalize the innocent, no matter the severity of their actions.
I wasn't sure what to say to the old coal wagon, and I didn't have the time to. The lorry had been cleared of its load, and the chute ready for the morning. As I walked to the driver's side of the lorry, I turned to the truck. Right, I'll think about it a bit more. Thanks for listening. At that, he gave a creaky old smile through the wood of his frames.
Anything for a fellow member of the family. Hope we'll speak again soon.
I gave a small wave as I entered the lorry and began my drive back to the colliery. Throughout the entire ride back, I couldn't help but stew on the words from the old wagon. A pit formed within my stomach. The moment I parked the lorry at the shed and made my way in the direction of Richard's car, the pit grew larger. It began to unsettle me more and more, and it wasn't because of the deeply disturbing words of an old coal wagon. It was coming from my own head. As I sat into the passenger seat, the corner of my eye caught a shadowy outline standing at the entrance to the colliery. I didn't acknowledge it. I tried not to acknowledge it. The moment we got home, I silently made my way to wash up and went straight to my desk. So many thoughts ran through my head, each scaring me more and more until I couldn't take it anymore and decided that it was time to return. My little circle of sanity. My pencil is getting shakier, and the feeling hasn't subsided. I'll need some rest. signing off.
November 12th, 1971.
It happened again. I really don't understand how it managed to surprise me when it happened. It was practically habitual. I made my way to work as I always did. I find another broken shovel sitting at the foot of my cabinet. Naturally, I was mad when it happened, and like any other day, I went on foolishly believing that today would be the day it stopped. It never was. Hours passed and our shift flew by as it always did. I was one of the last to pack up for the day, double-checking that the machines were well oiled for tomorrow's load. That's when I heard it. That familiar, ear-grating voice that has tormented me for the last several months.
Ah, man of the hour. Just who I was looking for. Changing the tires to the bloody watermill.
You're drunk, Scott. Go home. I'm closing up.
Fuck like you are. Sick of you city rats trying to take my job. Get the fuck off, you posing son of a shit.
He grabbed my arm, squeezing my wrist like he was trying to rip it straight off my shoulder. I tried to pull away, but he just moved his other arm to my neck, trying to strangle me. What are you doing? Let me go, you psycho.
Fuck you. Tired of seeing your queer little ass. I'm gonna kill you right here.
At that moment, I acted purely out of survival instincts. With my free arm, I placed my hand flat on his head and positioned my thumb to squeeze into his right eye. He stumbled back, more furious than ever. I took that moment to push past him, knocking him backwards. His back hit the railing, and he plummeted, head first, several meters down into the rocks below. There was a sickening crunch before a wave of complete silence. I couldn't believe it at first, but as I slowly made my way to the railing, I gazed down, and all I could see was the horrifying sight of what remained of old Scott. That's when the panic began to set in. What do I do? I had well and truly messed up this time. Not only would I be fired from the one job out of the many I was turned away from, but now I could be facing prison time, locked behind a set of bars, with all my rights stripped away from me. I would have to live the rest of my life with yet another stain on my record, and the guilt of knowing I had caused the death of an innocent worker. It was all too much. I don't know how long I just sat there weeping at the grisly sight before me.
What's happened here?
I turned in horror at the familiar voice of Mr. Pelhay. He stood right next to where I had been weeping and stared down at what remained of Scott. Mr. Pelhay, I'm so sorry. I am so very sorry. It was an accident. He was attacking me. I tried to run away. I didn't mean for this to happen. I swear, please. Please, you have to believe me. I would never. I'm not a murderer. He didn't say a word. He just began making his way down the steps of the machine. His head motioned for me to follow him. We approached the grisly sight of Scott's remains. I could barely face the sight from up above, and seeing it closer was even more nauseating.
Hold your stomach. Just get a shovel and a sack from the racks.
What?
You aren't deaf, are you? Do as you're told.
I didn't have the strength to ask any questions, so I did. I came back from the cabinets with a shovel and a sack just as Mr. Pelhay had asked. As soon as I handed him the shovel and the sack, he approached the grisly sight and began adjusting the mangled body to a horizontal position with the shovel. What are you doing?
What does it look like? We need to take care of the body.
But why?
Does he look like he's living? The hell you mean, why? Get the lorry started and bring her over to the chute.
I truly did not know what to think at that moment, and I was too scared of what would happen if I didn't comply. As soon as I had parked the lorry where he had requested, Mr. Pelhay made his way over with the sack containing the body of Scott. He loaded the bag into the trunk and secured it with the ropes inside.
He then made his way to my door.
You're doing good. I'll take it from here. I know the way better.
With that, I exited the driver's seat and boarded the passenger. He took the lorry through the back entrance of the colliery and in the opposite direction of the station. What about Richard?
What about him?
Shouldn't he know about this?
You needn't worry about him. He's been around for a while.
Am I fired? Am I going to prison?
You aren't fired, son, and you aren't going to prison. If I wanted that, I would have called the police the moment I saw you push old Scott off the railing.
Mr. Pelhay, please. It was an accident. I swear I didn't mean to.
I didn't say I was angry, did I?
Why aren't you?
No point to it. Today, you're going to learn how the real world works.
We drove for the longest time and went deeper into the valley. I was frightened and scared out of my mind, but I didn't want to do anything stupid for fear of what might happen if I did. Eventually, we reached a clearing, and situated deep behind a thick collection of trees was a roughly constructed warehouse. Outside the shuttered doors was a pair of men, seemingly waiting for our arrival. The pair opened up the leftmost shutter to the warehouse, and Mr. Pelhay drove inside. The shutter closed behind us, and for a moment we sat in darkness. The room slowly lit as a series of ceiling lights switched on, bathing the room in a fluorescent glow. That's when Mr. Pelhay opened his door and made his way to the back of the lorry.
Come on, son. I didn't bring you here just for you to sit around.
As I exited the lorry, the shock slowly subsided and made way for confusion and fear. What's going on, Mr. Pelhay? Where are we? What is this?
I'll get to that in a moment. First, we have to take care of business.
With that, he released the ties binding the sack in the back of the trunk. He lifted the sack over his shoulder and made his way to a large steel hatch. As soon as we had reached it and the shutter had opened, I realized exactly what it was. An incinerator. With one quick motion, Mr. Pelhay dumped the sack into the roaring belly of the flames and promptly closed the hatch.
And that takes care of that. Alright, let's go. I've got a lot to tell you.
What the hell? That's that?
What's that?
Did you just incinerate the remains of a body?
Of course. Ever heard of cremation?
That's not what I'm getting at. That man, a few hours ago, was a living, breathing human being. He had thoughts and feelings, his image placed into the memories of his family and friends, and we just threw all of that into the fire.
That man was a liability. Couldn't keep a good head on his shoulders, and especially for his wife. You have any idea how frequently he battered her every evening?
That doesn't give us the right to just toss his body into the flames. We didn't even give him a proper burial, no funeral, no goodbye. And his family and friends will be worried sick.
You're certainly one to speak on morals. Was it not you who shoved that man off the railing? Would you take the honors of sharing that man's tragic demise at your hands to his friends and family? Hell, if anyone had any right to give that pillock what was coming, it was gonna be you.
Sure, he was a right bellend, but even so, nobody deserves this.
Not even the man who beat his wife every night within an inch of her life?
I truthfully could not answer that, and tried my hardest not to think about it. Scott may have been a right tosser and a sadistic bully, but even so, he was still a human being. I made a mental note to myself at that moment to create a small grave for him even without a body to bury, but I couldn't think about that for too long. So why have you brought me here? Are you going to take care of me as well?
Son, if I wanted to take care of you, I would have done so the moment you stepped foot into my office day one.
So what then? Why am I here?
'Cause you're family now.
What? What's that supposed to mean? You ever wonder why it was that I hired you for your position? Admittedly, I hadn't put much thought into the matter. I was too ecstatic at the prospect of finally finding work after several months of wayward misery. It was because I had a lot of heart, right?
You really still believe in that steaming pile of hot shit? Think now. What was it that you told me that day?
Well, I told you my experience, and about how I got fired from the Northwestern.
Mm-hmm. And?
And that I would do anything to be a part of the team.
Atta lad, you're on the right steps. Now, let me ask you something else. Where do you think most of the revenue from Fred Pelhay's coal company comes from? Think carefully now.
Well, most of the industries here still use coal for their factories.
That much is true, but you and I both know how times are changing. With nationalization and the shift towards diesel-powered engines, it's only a matter of time before most of that is phased out.
Well, very few places around here would have a reason to keep using coal with the shift in fuel, and the only other place around here that still utilizes a majority of the source is the Northwestern.
Good. That's exactly the answer I was waiting for. Because it's wrong.
I'm sorry?
Yes, a lot of the profits directly from coal deposits is a result of the Northwestern's constant need for the sooty substance. A lot of the island's money is spent reaching out to contractors to provide the island with the fuel. You can only find so many veins on a small little island after all, but that's not where most of our money comes from.
So, where does it come from?
Correct me if I'm wrong. Richard told me about your dream to settle within that little island with your wife. Well, former wife now. Become integrated within the Northwestern family, chummy with the Old Hat family, and living a peaceful country life with the folks at Farquhar and Knapford. Tell me something. Just how much do you really know about the Northwestern?
Well, from its earliest years, it was a collection of disjointed railways looking for resources. Eventually, over time, they started forming into one cohesive network during the First World War, and the network was used as a strategic route in the event of an invasion. Eventually, the network formed into its own independent railway and became the Northwestern.
Yep, sounds about right. What else?
Well, when the Big Four merged into British Railways, the Northwestern didn't make a full merger. In fact, the region retained a great deal of independence from the merger that it was practically still the Northwestern Railway, despite the title shift to region. And also, recently, it made the decision not to modernize like the rest of the British Railways network.
Good. That's good. You've got a good head, son.
And that's about it, right?
That's about as much as they'll tell you. They'll tell you of the Northwestern's decision to maintain its integrity, of a safe haven for steam, a land of dreams for the outdated and traditional, and a magical island where dreams really come true. What they don't tell you are the numbers. You've any idea how much it cost to upkeep a fleet of steam engines back when we had a shed full of them?
I imagine a lot.
Right. Now try and picture that amount and multiply it by the number you see that can occupy an entire island.
It must be a lot of money, certainly.
A lot wouldn't even begin to describe it. The Northwestern spends more money on upkeeping its engines than any other railway on this planet. It takes in a good amount of money, of course, and so many of those profits are going straight to repairs, refueling, overhauls, you name it. The result? Stasis. Every other region of British Railways is fighting to maintain profit to keep our tracks running. And here we have this tiny little region of the network turning in massive profit every season of the year. And where's it going? All back to the same railway that's turning up those same big numbers. Tell me something. How would you feel if you had a brother with the talent to make 100 crops every day that could feed the rest of your family? But the catch is that more than 75% of those crops go straight into the mouth of the man who made them?
I'm not sure, really.
Well, let me tell you something. Sometimes the family's sick and tired of fighting for that 25%. And maybe the problem isn't that we can't work around that quarter of a hole, but that the big fat stomach swallowing up that 75 is the real root of the issue. You know that well enough yourself, don't you?
I do?
What was it that old Charles told you before you were ousted from his little old railway? Something about, can't overlook this, and you aren't ready. Or that old station master of yours. What was it? Sorry ain't bringing back thousands in damages and worse. Next time it won't just be the cargo that's spilt. That old railway might put up a front of being one big loving family, but really, all it is another bottom line. Isn't that the truth?
The more I let the thought stew, the more I realized what Mr. Pelhate was getting at. It was practically a fact that the Northwestern was among the most popular railways in the entire world. It turned up a better profit than any other region of British railways, even since the 40s. And yet, ironically and conversely, it was undoubtedly the most expensive region of the network to upkeep. So much of the network's freedom was applicable to its economics as well. It had the liberty of allocating funds to whatever section of its railway it deemed appropriate, and so much of it went into maintaining the very thing that brought in the most tourists every season of every new year. And here it was, the independent railway of the Northwestern, placing itself into economic stasis while the rest of British railways struggled to make do, and watched as every year the railway that never fully nationalized turns up a profit, only to position itself in the same spot it always was again and again. It started to make sense why so many workers of the railway came and went, and why so many people apply year after year and receive denial after denial. They weren't just being tough on the newer workers for the sake of integrity. It was a necessity. Even one small slip-up could tip the delicate balance of the Northwestern's economy and sink all of it to the ground. And they knew it. It was then that we approached a door leading presumably to the other half of the warehouse. Mr. Pelhate turned a small steel knob, and inside I saw several tables with people. People just like any other bloke walking down the street of the neighborhood. But beyond that, I noticed a handful of familiar faces. Some of these weren't just strangers I've never met. In fact, a lot of them were from the colliery. As Mr. Pelhate led me down the stairs to a nearby table, I took a moment to absorb the sheer amount of people that had gathered in this small little warehouse in the middle of nowhere.
Have a seat, son. There's someone you ought to meet.
Really? Why's that?
Let's just say you aren't as alone as you think you are.
With that, he walked back, up the stairs, his head turned to the railings that overlooked this section of the building. I turned my gaze back to the table and noticed another man sitting before me. I was a little startled. How long had he been sitting there, watching me trail off?
I take it you're our newest family member.
I'm not sure how to answer that.
You'll understand it soon enough. All of us inevitably do.
What do you mean? What is this place? Why are you all here deep in the valley?
We're a family, brought together for something greater.
Something greater?
All our brothers here were gathered together by the generous fathers who granted mercy in our sorry lives. We were all thrown to the streets and left to rot like rubbish. Once we were all trash, and now we stand together as a family. We all share the same story.
Same story? With that, he turned to the tables behind and around us.
72 over there was a dockyard man until he was gone after a line of trucks smashed up an old barge. 65 over there was thrown after an old tram got suspended over the river.
He turned back to face me,
an expression of nothing. I'm 122, and I left after an express train smashed into a wagon stuck on the main line. The slow realization had begun settling in, and it solidified as soon as the sentence had finished and digested. Keith? I know no Keith. That man was put to the grave months ago. But what about your family? Your friends? This is my family. All of us are family. Family of what? Family of the saviors. We were all taken in by our generous fathers. Before we were family, we had nothing. After we left that old island, nobody wanted us for nothing. Not even our old families. We were ruined, ready to rot and wither in the streets. But we were all rescued, given a new life, new future, new purpose. New purpose? Gathered here in a dirty old warehouse, kilometers away from the city? The city would never understand. They listen only to the powers that serve to dispose of us. To them, to everyone but us, we're all a means to an end. Especially the one that was the very reason all of us had lost ourselves to the world. The one? The Northwestern. We were all part of the Northwestern family. We all thought we had security, assurance, love, and care. But oh, how naive, how foolish we were. The Northwestern is no different than any other so-called family. Family never chooses to abandon its own in the name of a greater good. It never decides neglect and ignorance to those they have thrown to the wayside, as though their own children were bilge and filth. A true family sees the hope and potential of even the sickest child. But oh, the Northwestern is no family at all. It was and always will be a business. The Hat family will lovingly care, maintain, and cherish its beloved steam-powered brigade. But what of the workers, who such machines sit upon the backs of? What of them? Such family, all the press, the money, the love, straight towards the engines of the railway, while the weary men who keep them afloat get nothing. How's that for a family? I couldn't respond. The more I thought about it, the more I began to reevaluate my short time spent on the Northwestern. The swirl of thoughts from the past few months of working at this colliery have been a whirlwind. If it even was a colliery. The words of Mr. Pelhay, of the old truck at the station, and now Keith's. It was so much to process. My dear brother, soon it will all make sense. It always takes time. Know that you are not alone. We all stand in solidarity, and soon we will all share the same purpose. That's when I heard it. A loud voice from above where we sat. I turned my head to the source. It was Mr. Pelhay. He had a microphone and was addressing the entire floor full of people.
All my wonderful brothers, tonight we stand once again in solidarity amidst the misery thrust onto our world. In our family, we hear your pain, we hear your cries, and we share in the suffering so unjustly placed upon our fellow family members. Tonight, we welcome a new member to our little family. His pain and days spent in suffering and loneliness will never be again. Justice will be made to all those who have suffered, who have lost their way, who have been wronged again and again. We will not be lost. We will not be tossed, and we will not be nothing.
A thunderous roar erupted from the warehouse of people. It shook me to my core, and yet somehow, in hearing Mr. Palhay's voice, it commanded so much authority and it affirmed every bit of pain I'd experienced for so many months. For so long, I was trapped in a perpetual cycle of waking up every day and feeling so lost and alone in the world. And here I was, thousands of people, just like me, who had experienced the same feeling of isolation and suffering as I had, standing together to tell me that I wasn't alone. As we all left the room into the garage, the steel shutter door had already been opened to allow the other parked lorries to exit out into the evening. It was there that Richard was waiting for me in his Cortina. I didn't say a word, just gave him a small nod before entering the passenger seat. It was dead silent the whole drive back to Richard's house. As soon as we pulled in and parked, he finally spoke.
This world ain't the nicest place to be, kid. But it is nice knowing you ain't the only one who suffered alone.
I didn't respond. I just gave a small and unsure nod as we exited and entered the house. Like any other night, I simply washed and headed to my room. I've sat here for a good minute trying to think about something else I could write. I guess I still need a bit more time. In which case, I could get some rest. See you soon.
January 1st, 1972.
December 31st. I couldn't sleep. My natural instinct was to return to writing. I sat at my desk, wondering and thinking. The thoughts presented I didn't want to have, and that's when it had happened. Everything began turning to dark, the ground becoming unstable, and that loud droning came back. I turned my head from my desk, and sure enough, there it was, back again. I turned away, my eyes glued to the page before me, the empty page, and I just started writing. Why is this happening? This figure, this rotten little presence that followed me all over the valley, it's here to destroy my life again, and I was sick of it. This wretched thing, where did it come from? This figure has been ruining my life again and again, and it all started back on the Northwestern. That stupid thing, it came from the Northwestern. That stupid, vile, selfish, entitled little railway. It's not enough that it completely ruined my working life. I lost my wife, lost my job, lost any chance at a decent life. My apartment trashed, my belongings all ruined. I was forced out into the sticks to get tormented by some stupid, insecure bully whose image turns more and more into the face of that stupid station master. Wretched old station master. To hell with Mr. Collins. To hell with Sir Charles. To hell with that rotten, disgusting Northwestern Railway. Then, it all stopped. The darkness faded. The ground stabilized. The ringing stopped. And the figure had vanished. The unease of the room had evaporated without a trace. And all that was left that I could hear was the ticking of the old clock that hung at the center of the room. Then, it all made sense now. Of course. How could I have been so blind? My life, everything ran straight through the mud the moment I left the old railway. My wife was gone. Her family trashed my safe space. No job would ever take me in. And now here I was, living in the middle of nowhere, relying on an old colliery to keep me afloat, as I got bullied by people who thought they were better than me. And it all started the moment I was abandoned. It was never my fault. It was theirs. That wretched little railway, the cause of all my problems. I wasn't the only one either.
So many lost souls who were wronged by that stupid, selfish little island. That's what the family meant. Now I understand. We were all brought together through pain and through suffering caused by the Northwestern. We are to right the wrongs caused by that disgusting little island.
April 5th, 1972.
It's almost time. It's been a good few months. I returned to Mr. Pelhay that morning in January, and I told him that I finally understood. He gave me a big smile.
I knew I made the right choice bringing you on.
I stopped working so frequently at the colliery. It wasn't the most important thing after all. I did meet up with that old truck a few times. I told him about the family, but he already knew. I attended every new meetup at the warehouse, learned more and more about the stories of my brothers. Come a few months later, and I would be selected with a handful of brothers of mine. It was finally time. It was simple. We were finally going to give back the pain that was brought upon us for so many months and so many years. Turns out that old truck is far better than just his own words. He got just enough information at Callan to know that an afternoon train was scheduled to stop at the newly built chocolate factory. With that, it was our time to act. A few of our brothers were uncertain that the load would be taken, but they didn't need to worry. Worry not, my dear brothers. There's a few things an old signalman would know. Percy consistently takes an odd job after completing his first. It's a guarantee. We packed into the back of an unmarked lorry and drove a good distance from the valley to Barrow. Then from there, we passed the land bridge and took several back roads in the hills of the island and parked behind the foliage. With just enough oil in our packed drums, we emptied the whole lot into the tracks to the factory. We waited in the lorry, and sure enough, there was old number 6 ready to meet with justice from those who had been so wronged by this rotten little island. Staring down the remains of the factory walls, the hospital car storming down the dirt road towards the lot, and the little green engine covered in brown, I felt nothing. Vengeance had fallen, and yet, nothing. It wasn't enough. Justice needed to be served, and this just won't do. The moment we left the island and back towards the valley, my brothers were already planning the next operation. It had been so long since they had set foot as a worker of the Northwestern, but I knew. Every Friday evening, Gordon takes a heavy goods train from the harbor at Brendam. There was an old branch line worn down by time near the exit from Brendam, accessed by one track. Gordon consistently takes the leftmost track with heavy goods. The plan was set, and we will soon have many more, each one serving as punishment for the injustices against my brothers and I.
June 11th, 1972.
Our pursuit of justice draws ever closer with another successful operation. I'm writing this hidden behind countless rocks in a thick blanket of fog and misty valley, and I wish to make this brief before me and my brothers make our leave. We have successfully loosened a good number of rocks sitting above the tracks below the mountain. It's another small step towards our greater purpose, but it will all be worth it. We'll finally take back what was wrongfully stolen by this disgusting old railway. We've completed a number of successful operations in the last month. A week ago I spoke with that old truck.
That dear old soul that inspired me to take the reins of my life and to reclaim what I so rightfully deserved. Another blessed evening after justice was served once more earlier that afternoon. His splintering chuckle had become oh so comforting to hear every journey back to the shunting yard.
My good brother, have we another successful deliverance of justice?
Great success. Soon we will right the wrongs of that wretched old island, right the wrongs of my dearest brothers, and of my family.
Yes, wretched old island indeed. Selfish old railway, stolen all that was good of our innocent brothers.
Tell me, dear brother, what is it that the island has taken from you?
A fellow brother of another family, so unfairly treated by the wretched selfish engines of the railway. That great western brute. Not to worry, I gave him what he rightfully deserved months ago.
Wonderful. Soon we won't have to worry for that rotten little railway. We will deliver justice, and we will all be for the better.
Oh, my dear brother, it does me great pain to share with you the shattering truth of our pursuit of justice.
The shattering truth?
Our pursuit of justice, our longing to right the wrongs made by that oppressive regime of a railway, is not as close to the end as you believe. Our fight spans decades. Piece after piece, push after push, we have made progress. And yet, we make little every year with each show of effort by the blessed hearts of our noble brothers.
Then, what, my dear brother? Is our effort so fruitless?
Not at all. My frames are quite old, and I've seen many of our brothers arriving, and many more departing to something greater, and in the name of fulfilling the mission set upon our beloved family for so many years. Our brothers, they find not just the purpose of our family's greater mission, but of that of their role to a greater cause. Like wood, our bodies and shell were never for eternity, but the efforts they made and the results of their contributions to our beloved family, they last beyond time, and forever they will exist, a strong stone to a glorious house, made for our dearest brothers, and all thanks to the brothers of before who found their greatest purpose in their mission.
Yes, of course. My dear brother, our mission will never succeed. As long as we hesitate, we will never achieve true justice for the thousands before us. Only if we truly find it within ourselves to discover, to contribute, to accept our greater purpose in our wonderful cause, shall we bring honor to those who have tried their efforts and have left their legacy for us to stand upon. Thank you, my dear brother.
Of course, dear brother. I do hope you find the purpose you have for our family.
As I left the yard in the old lorry, I finally understood. That wise old truck had once more offered his generous help. Our mission has spanned many decades, and so many more of my dearest brothers have fought to right the wrongs, and their legacy lives in our greater cause. As I parked the lorry and made my way to dear old Richard, I knew then of my purpose, my role in this wonderful pursuit of justice. In that moment of realization, I noticed only for a moment a small light that glowed from the corner of my eye as I boarded my seat. For the briefest moment, I could see that it resembled something human. Meters away, its bright glow dull, and its form so small as though it were struggling on the ground, reaching for me. I turned my head away.
The fog has cleared, and I'll be on my way.
July 5th, 1972.
I have been given a special task, and maybe, just maybe, our family will take back what was rightfully taken from us for so many years. I have snuck past the workers who have taken a tea break from the reconstruction of Great Waterton. There's a line of stone parked next to the unfinished tower. I have replaced the front wagon with a rusty old coupling. There's nothing to worry about. Not one single engine double-checks the condition of a load's coupling. I am hidden inside the unfinished tower to ensure everything goes according to plan. It's alright. I have discovered my greater purpose. In 5 minutes of writing this, Thomas will pick up this load of stone up a steep incline. The coupling will break, and once more will justice be served. I accept my place in the family, and the message I will send in completing this pursuit of justice. My family will know of my story, my heroism. It will all be over soon. I remain here waiting for God to ascend me beyond this wretched old world. Thank you, my brothers. My purpose is realized. This clock will strike 12. Justice to the lost, and karma to the condemned.